So today the class is about the hypoglossal nerve. So previously we've started the cranial nerves. So then it was the oculomotor, the nerves of the orbit. Okay, so the nerves which will be moving your eyeball. So they are the motor nerves. So cranial nerves are, so the 3, 4, 6 and 12, they belong to the somatoefferent column. So if you remember the brainstem which I have previously we've drawn that. So here the hypoglossal nerve is a 12th cranial nerve and this moves the tongue. So let's get back to the embryology part of the tongue. So what is the development of the tongue? So there are 3 sources from which the tongue develops. So one is the mucosa, and then you have the muscles, and then there's a fibroalveolar component. So if you remember the histological section of the tongue, okay. So this is covered by the mucosa, and this is the pharyngeal apparatus. If you remember the class which I have taken a few weeks before. So in the floor of your oral cavity, you have this tongue. So when it was developing, there were some tongue buds. There was a median tongue bud, and then there are 2 lateral lingual buds which come together. And then you have a hypobranchial element which comes forward, and then that's how your tongue is developed. So that fibroalveolar component, so the tongue is not just the muscles. You've got some glands, you've got some connective tissue in it. So this is all from the mesenchyme of those particular branchial arches. Whereas the mucosa is from the endoderm. And then coming to the muscles, it is the occipital myotomes. So if you remember, there was a median lung bud in the floor of the pharynx. So then there were 2 lateral lung buds which overgrow onto it. And then behind that's a hypobranchial eminence. So this entire part will become the tongue. So the tongue. So this anterior 2/3 is from these lingual buds, and this part will be from the hypobranchial eminence. Okay, so the endoderm. So if you remember the innervation of this mucosa, so the anterior 2/3. So this is this general sensation is picked up by the lingual nerve, and the taste sensation is picked up by the chorda tympani. Then if you look at this posterior to 1/3 part, so this is innervated by your glossopharyngeal nerve and posterior most part by the vagus. So here we are having both the lingual, which is branch of the trigeminal, and then you've got the facial. And then here it is 9, and more posteriorly it is 10. So if you remember this innervation of the tongue. So that's about the mucosa and the endoderm. And then coming to this muscle, I told you it comes from the occipital myotomes. So if you remember, there is a paraxial mesoderm that will be forming the somites. So if this is the neural tube, so the cranial part of the neural tube is forming the brain. So there are 3 brain vesicles. Then you've got the neural tube. And then this is the location where the head mesoderm is here. On either side, the paraxial mesoderm. So the preaortic mesoderm, that will be forming the somites. So the head somites are total 7 in number. So this is a forebrain vesicle, midbrain, and this is the hindbrain. So from the midbrain, the oculomotor goes to the first ocular somite, then trochlear goes to the second ocular somite, then the abducens goes to the third ocular somite. So there are 3 ocular somites. And then whatever muscles arise from this somite. So you know the somite is again, when you form the germatome, it will form the sclerotome, then it will form the myotome. So whatever muscles arise from this ocular myotome, they are all innervated by the oculomotor. So it's like this. So 3 ocular myotomes. Then here, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you've got 4 occipital somites. So here, this is from the caudal part of the medulla. So nerve comes, and then so for the 4, that is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are the occipital somites, and you can see the rootlets coming here from the brainstem and innervating these occipital somites. So this is from where your tongue muscles are going to develop. So I hope you understood this. So development of tongue, it is 3 sources, that is the mucosa, the muscles, and the fibroalveolar component. So the myotome component of the occipital somite migrate to the tongue rudiments to form the tongue muscles. So here the tongue rudiments is that lingual swelling, hypobranchial eminence. Okay, the mesenchyme is that which is forming there. So there, the tongue muscles which are going to come from the occipital somites, so they have to come and occupy the position there. So when these are migrating here, then they also pull down the hypoglossal nerve along with them. So hypoglossal nerves, these originate from the somatic efferent column of the brainstem. So this, if you remember the brainstem which we have drawn, this looks like I've got some hand incoordination. Yes. Okay. So this is the motor and this is the sensory part. So there are three columns here. So this column, that is the somatomotor or the somatic efferent column. So here the 3, 4, and you've got 6, and you've got 12. Okay. So I hope you understood this. The nerve fibers grow from the hypoglossal nucleus, leave the brainstem, converge to form a common trunk, and contact with the occipital myotomes. So the same thing. So as these four, so you see the hypoglossal nerves going to the occipital myotomes. So as these migrate to where your tongue is going to develop. Okay, so they drag these 4 rootlets and these form one common trunk, and that is your hypoglossal nerve. So the hypoglossal nerve is dragged along with them to supply the tongue musculature. So that's about the development of the tongue and how the hypoglossal nerve is coming up to your tongue to supply the muscles. So the introduction part, so any cranial nerve, you've got to talk about the introduction part, which you tell about a few words about the hypoglossal. So you've got this, the basal plate of embryonic medulla oblongata. So the brainstem, it is having what? The basal lamina and the alar lamina. And the basal lamina is what which contains all the motor neurons. So that's a somatic motor component and supplies the extrinsic and intrinsic tongue muscles. So if you know the gross anatomy of the tongue musculature is having intrinsic muscles and the extrinsic muscles. So the intrinsic muscles, what are the intrinsic muscles? So we have to review the attachments and actions of the tongue muscles. Before that, what are the intrinsic and what are the extrinsic? So intrinsic muscles are those which are found in your tongue. Okay. So these include the muscles which are superior longitudinal and inferior longitudinal, and there are muscles which are transversely oriented, transversus linguae. Then you've got something which are fibers are oriented vertically, so it is verticalis linguae. So these are the intrinsic muscles. So you should again remember the intrinsic muscles of your hand, intrinsic muscles of your foot. So these are the intrinsic muscles. Then what about the extrinsic muscles? So when you talk of the extrinsic muscles, so you've got the mandible, then you know what is the location of your hyoid, and then behind your ear you've got the mastoid process, and in front of it will be more deep will be the styloid process. And what is there in the roof of your mouth? You've got a palate, and there's a palatine aponeurosis. So the muscle fibers from these structures, okay, these tough structures come and go into the tongue muscle. So that they are going to form the extrinsic muscles. So what are the various extrinsic muscles that you've got? So the extrinsics of this, you've got your mandible here, then you've got the styloid process here, then you've got your hyoid here, and the roof of the oral cavity, you've got the palate. So the muscle fibers come and innervate towards they come to insert into your tongue. So these are the extrinsic muscles. So you've got from the mandible, whatever goes is your genioglossus, because from the genial tubercles it's going to arise. Then you've got from the styloid process, that is a styloglossus. Then from the hyoid, whatever is going, that will be the hyoglossus. So these extrinsic ones. So, and the one which comes from your palate is the palatoglossus. So if you remember the oral cavity and the oropharynx, so what is there in the lateral wall of the oropharynx? You've got tonsillar fossa, and the tonsillar fossa consists of the tonsil. These are derivatives of the second pharyngeal pouch. And what are the boundaries of the tonsillar fossa? You've got an anterior pillar and a posterior pillar. So, and that anterior pillar, that is, so you've got this like this, the tonsillar fossa. So this anterior pillar is called as a palatoglossus, and behind whatever is it, that is a palatopharyngeus. And here, that's where you have the tonsil. So I hope you remember this now, the palatoglossus. So this is the tongue. You've got the mandible here, and then you've got the hyoid, and here is your styloid process, and this is the palatine aponeurosis. So this part is a palatoglossus. Then here, this is a styloglossus. This is the hyoglossus, and this part is a genioglossus. So these are all the extrinsic muscles of the tongue. Okay, so all the extrinsic muscles of the tongue, except the palatoglossus and the intrinsic muscles of the tongue. So these are all supplied by the hypoglossal nerve. So there's actions and attachments you can read. So coming to this, so now coming to the hypoglossal nerve. So this is a 12th cranial nerve, and this is why is it called hypoglossal? Because it's running below the tongue. Okay, so I mean the so-called tongue. So it's like we call it hypo. Glossa is the tongue, so hypoglossal nerve. And this controls the tongue movement of speech, food manipulation, and the swallow. So your tongue is important when you want to talk, when you want to swallow, when you want to chew and eat. So this is what it's controlling. The hypoglossal nerve controls the tongue movements. And there are three important questions which are important for your entrance examination, which are like very frequent. See, all except, like now just now I've talked about the tongue. So all the muscles of the tongue, which that is the intrinsic muscles and the extrinsic muscles, are innervated by the hypoglossal except the palatoglossus. Then what is the nerve innervating it? It is through the vagus. The same way we've got the soft palate. So all the muscles of the soft palate are innervated by the pharyngeal branch of vagus, except the tensor villi palatine. So if you remember the tensor villi palatine, your first arch derivative is innervated by your mandibular division of the trigeminum. Then again here, all the muscles of the pharynx are innervated by the vagus, except the stylopharyngeus. The stylopharyngeus is coming from your third pharyngeal arch. So these 3 points you just remembered. So I'm just putting all whatever classes I've completed, I'm putting them together in my class. Because hypoglossal nerve is just a small nerve, and I think it's better if I review these. So we talked about the development, we've talked about a little bit of the gross structure of the tongue, and 3 important points which you should remember about the head and neck region and their nerve innervation, muscles and nerve. Next, coming to us, so that's about the introduction of the hypoglossal nerve, and now coming to functional components. So total brainstem, it will be showing you 7 functional components, but not all the cranial nerves have all the 7 functional components, right? And this hypoglossal nerve is an exclusive motor nerve, and this arises from the somatic efferent column. The somatic efferent column. Then coming to this hypoglossal nucleus. So the starting of the story begins with the nucleus and ends with the destination. So first thing is the hypoglossal nucleus. So this is where you have the lower motor neurons. Okay. So this nucleus is under the higher control. The cerebral cortex controls it. So whatever neuron comes from there, that is upper motor neuron, and whatever neuron exits from this nucleus, that is your lower motor neuron. Okay. UMN and LMN. So first you should know where is this hypoglossal nerve located. So previously when I've drawn the diagram, I have shown you the medulla part. So in the medulla, you've got this hypoglossal nucleus. So it's going to be a lengthy one. So it's around 2 centimeters long nucleus. So if you know the medulla, so this part here. So this is the floor of, dorsal aspect of brainstem that is being shown. So this part is your medulla. So the upper part, the rostral part is open and the caudal part is closed. Okay, so this hypoglossal nucleus, it extends from this rostral part, sorry, this one, down up to the closed part. So it's almost 2 centimeters long. So this part is in the rostral part and this is in the caudal part. So here, so this part here, this is forming an elevation here. When you look at from behind, when you look at the floor of the fourth ventricle, what you find are elevations. So what are these elevations representing? So beneath it, you have the hypogloss. So this is a location where you have the hypoglossal nucleus. So this one is the facial colliculi. So these are more prominent. But you can see this part is called as a hypoglossal colliculus or the hypoglossal triangle. So this area is where you have the hypoglossal nuclei. So they're forming an eminence. A small elevation will be there. Then coming to your intranuclear connection. So now I told you there's a hypoglossal nucleus. So this nucleus will be lying in line with your ventral horns of the spinal cord. If you remember the spinal cord section, it has ventral horns and it has the dorsal horns. So ventral horns is having all the cell bodies of the lower motor neurons. Okay, so they are also motor, they go to your muscles which are derived from the somites. So exactly on the same level, much above, that's where you have the medulla, above the spinal cord, that's where you have the hypoglossal nucleus. And just one more thing here, you can see this is the midline, and you can see they're so close to the midline. So usually if there's some lesion, some mass impinging on this nucleus, there's a chance that it can also extend up to the other hypoglossal nucleus also because of the close proximity to the midline. So usually both of them may get affected. So this is about the floor. Yeah, and here this is the hypoglossal eminence. So beneath it is what lies with hypoglossal nucleus. But actually the entire nucleus is here. It's entire part. Okay, from extending up from the rostral up to the caudal part of this nucleus. So this nucleus is like just a column of all the gray matter. So this nucleus has to get some commands. So, okay, so from the higher center is what? It is your cerebral cortex. So the cerebral cortex, like we have the entire university. So it has recently scared you. So that is the one which is going to control everything. So it's got the cerebral cortex, the higher center. So from there, this nucleus, the hypoglossal nucleus. So if this is the cerebral cortex of both sides, and this is your hypoglossal nucleus, okay, and this is the upper motor neuron this side. It innervates here. So receives corticonuclear fibers from both the cerebral hemispheres. So same thing also here. So this also gives information to this. Same way, this side it innervates this, and it also gives. So now what do you see? So this hypoglossal nucleus, this is receiving corticonucleus, some cortex to nucleus. So corticonuclear fibers from both the cerebral hemispheres. Now what's the next line here? So fibers to genioglossus receives innervation from contralateral cerebral hemisphere. So there are so many muscles to which the fibers from the nucleus have to go. Okay. So there is one special muscle here, we got the genioglossus, which comes from your mandible, genioglossus. Supposing this, there's a small part here. I'm just separating it, actually they're not separate. So this one receives innervation from the contralateral side. And this one receives innervation from this side. And ultimately what comes out of all this is your hypoglossal. Okay. So this is right and left nuclei. I hope you understood this part. So this one nucleus is receiving bilateral innervation. So this nucleus from both this side fiber as well as this. But genioglossus receiving only from here, the contralateral side. So this is the cerebral cortex. Okay, and then the geno you can see. So this is the upper motor neuron coming down. Internal capsule is traveling down, going to the opposite side, crossing the midline and going to your hypoglossal nucleus. So from your lower motor neuron is beginning, and this is the one which is going towards your genioglossus. Then intranuclear connection. So this hypoglossal nucleus, it also gets information from the other side. So proper coordinated activity. It has to connect with many others. So what does this nucleus do? Just gives motor information to your tongue. Like if you talk or you have to help in the mastication or you have to help in deglutition. So that's the only thing it can give a command. But it should have information like when to talk or when to start chewing or swallowing. So it needs to have other centers control also. So one thing is the cerebellum. So always cerebellum coordinates the motor activity. So this is a motor activity when you're talking, or you're masticating, or you're sticking, when you're swallowing, using your tongue. So then the movements of the tongue have to be coordinated, and for that it is a cerebellum. Sometimes when in examinations you act like you've got some cerebellar lesion because what you talk is actually it's like highly incoordinated. So that part here, then trigeminal sensory nucleus. So there is your anterior 2/3 picks up sensation from the trigeminal lingual branch. Your posterior part again pays the general sensation. But all your general sensation will be going up to your trigeminal sensory nucleus. So whatever is there on your tongue, Okay, so that information also received to your motor nucleus, because basing on that your tongue will move. If something is, I mean, something hot is put on your tongue, you immediately try to draw your tongue back, because the general sensation information has gone from your trigeminal nucleus, which actually picks up that sensation to your hypoglossal nucleus. Same thing when something is put on your tongue and you want to chew it, and it's the taste, you want to enjoy it for a longer time, you want to chew it. It's up to you how you're going to move the tongue and the tongue moves. So even from your, and where do all the taste sensations go? They go to the nucleus tractus solitarius. So this nucleus tractus solitarius also gives information to your hypoglossal nucleus. So your taste information goes, the general sensation information goes, and overall the cerebellum, which is watching everything. So it is also important for the coordination of the movements of the tongue. So I hope that is about the nucleus. So we have learned about the nucleus. So the location where it is. So it's about 2 centimeters long, extends throughout the medulla. So it's extending both in the open part of medulla as well as in the closed part. It's close to the midline, and this follows the line. So if you go below, you will go to the ventral horns of the spinal line. If you go above, in the upper horns, that's where you get the abducens nucleus. Much above is trochlear. Then above it is oculomotor. So they're all in line, and they're called as the somatoefferent column, the somatomotor. Then what comes of the nucleus? So whatever the fibers are coming out, so these constitute the hypoglossal nerve. So this is a basic first before I show the diagram. So they have to come out of the medulla. So this is the medulla, then this is the pyramid. Then you've got the olives. And then you've got the inferior cerebellar pediment. So this is the structure of the medulla. Okay. So here, within the medulla, you're having the nucleus. So the fibers have to travel, and then they come out, and this is where you find, and this hypoglossal nerve is special that it comes out as so many rootlets. Later, they all join to form one hypoglossal nerve. So the emerges from the medulla oblongata in the pre-olivary sulcus, separating the olive and pyramid. So this is the pyramid. This is the olive. So this is the sulcus from which the rootlets emerge out. Then after they emerge out, so I told you whenever a cranial nerve has to come out of the cranial cavity, it has to pass through a fissure or through some foramina, and the other one's a canal. If there's a length, then we call it as a canal. So then it has to pass through the hypoglossal canal. So from the nucleus, coming out to the sulcus and going out of the hypoglossal canal. Then the various, this is just to help you to understand the various ways it is going, the course and the relations. So the first thing is the hypoglossal nucleus. So this is the medulla, we have the hypoglossal nucleus here. Okay. So from this hypoglossal nucleus, then it has to come out. So this is the medullary segment as it is crossing the fiber. Then once it comes out, then it becomes cisternal segment. So I told you there are 3 meningeal layers. We've got the pia mater, which is close to this, the brain tissue. Then you've got the subarachnoid, and then you've got the dura mater. So then it enters into the subarachnoid space. So that is called a cisternal segment. Then it has to pierce what? So this is pia mater. Then this is the arachnoid. Then you've got the dura mater. So then it's traversing in the subarachnoid space, which is the cisternal segment. Then it has to go through the dura mater, and then it goes into the canalicular segment. So this canal is what? The hypoglossal canal. So this is one, the nucleus part. So this is one, the medullary part, and it's traversing it. Then this is your second part, the subarachnoid space. Then the third one is this canalicular part. So once it comes out, it's entering into it's coming into the extracranial segment. So extracranial again, so the styloid process is here. This is your tongue. Okay, and you've got all the foramina here. So from behind the base of the skull, where the hypoglossal comes. So this is the region where you have all your carotids and all that. So this is a hyoid bone. So there is a space above, so this part, and then it comes to the lingual part. So this part is your lingual part. So once it comes out, and this part we're talking of as a nasopharyngeal carotid space. So I think only 1 or 2 books give you all this information. So just for you to remember the course, I felt this would help. Okay. So this is the medullary part, and then this is the cisternal part, then this is the canalicular part, then here the suprahyoid or the carotid part, and then this is the lingual part. So this is how it's coursing. Then coming to the medullary segment. So this is all course, you can see the diagram and you can understand. So the same, the medulla here, and you can see the fibers going. So this part is your medial lemniscus. And here this is, so it's passing lateral to the medial lemniscus, and between the pyramid, this is the pyramid, and this is the olivary nucleus. So you can see they're passing between it, and then it exits out here. So the same diagram here I've shown. So here cerebral cortex, you can see the nuclear fibers innervating the hypoglossal nucleus. Then from here, this is all one nerve. Okay. So between pyramid, between olive, this is the medial lemniscus. And then here when they're coming out, so this is the pyramid. This is the olive. And you can see how many rootlets are coming out. Okay. These are all the hypoglossal rootlets. Just have to keep changing. Then cisternal segment, so the hypoglossal nerve, it crosses, so that's the same thing. So this is your vertebral artery here. You can see the relation. So this is, you're looking from behind, the hypoglossal nerve. Then canalicular segment, I told you hypoglossal canals. If you remember what was taught, or the PPT was also given to you about this hypoglossal canal basalis. So here, this is the foramen magnum here. And here you can see this is the hypoglossal canaliculus. And you can see this is the exit they're showing. Then coming to the extracranial course. Okay. So once it has come out, so this diagram, I think in the textbook, it was looking a bit complicated, so I've just drawn this. So there's a jugular foramen, and then from that, the internal jugular vein comes out, and there is 9, 10, 11 cranial nerves come out. So just behind it is your hypoglossal canal, from which the 12th cranial. So this is the 12th cranial, the hypoglossal. And then in front, you've got the carotid. So this is a common carotid, internal carotid, and external carotid. So this diagram here. So from the jugular fossa, when these, jugular foramen, these 3 nerves come, they go in 3 different directions. So the glossopharyngeal goes here forward towards your stylopharyngeus, vagus goes straight down, and then accessory goes behind to supply to your trapezius muscle. So there are 3 differently directed. So, and in front you've got your internal carotid, and then behind it is the internal jugular. So at the base of this curve, this is the relation here. So initially, when it is coming out, it is deep to these nerves. Okay, then it's going along with the vagus. And here, these 2 bellies, these represent your digastric. So you've got your, this is the mandible here, and from here you've got 2 muscles here. So this is your posterior belly of digastric, and this is the anterior belly of digastric. This is supplied by the mandibular division of trigeminal. This is from your facial nerve. So just once again recollect your branchial apparatus, pharyngeal apparatus, the muscles. So as it's coming here, it's going along with vagus. So just after it crosses it, it has become more superficial, and it's crossing the internal carotid artery. So this is again a branch of occipital artery. So it's here, this is lingual artery, it's crossing, and how this is how it's going. Okay, so it is between internal jugular vein and internal carotid artery. And it's crossing the internal carotid artery and also crosses lingual artery. And once it's crossing, then so this is the internal carotid artery. So from here, it's crossing this way, coming onto this muscle. So this muscle is your hyoglossus. So from your hyoid going up towards your tongue. So one side, this is the hyoglossus muscle. And then this is the mylohyoid, the cut section here. And the submandibular gland, it is around, there's a superficial part and a deep part. So they just wind around the posterior border of your mylohyoid. So this part here, you've got your mylohyoid. So diaphragm oris. So there are many diaphragms in your body. So you've got the thoraco-abdominal diaphragm. There's a pelvic diaphragm. Then you've got the iris diaphragm. And this is also your diaphragm oris. So this part here, you've got the 2 mylohyoids coming this way. Okay, so you can see it's going here, the hyoglossus muscle. And then it's supplying to all the muscles. So here also you can see this is genioid tubercles, so genioglossus muscle fibers. And here I told you this is hyoid, the hyoglossus muscle fibers. Then you've got stylocrossus, styloglossus. These are all extrinsic muscles. So the same how it's coursing, this is also written matter. So this diagram, if you can understand, I think that should help you. So the lingual space also, yeah, so you can see, this is the hypoglossal, crossing the lingual artery and going and to supply to the muscles of your tongue. So what is important to you is understand that the hypoglossal nucleus first is a location. Then there are a number of rootlets which emerge out, okay, on either side. And these rootlets emerge between the pyramid and the olet, which are the elevation which you see on the external surface of the medulla. So the reason why pyramid is there, it's because you've got your corticospinal tracts or the corticonuclear tracts going. So they form a bundles and they form an elevation on your ventral aspect of the medulla, forming the pyramids. Then just beside it, one more elevation, that is olive, because inside you've got an inferior olivary nucleus forming the bulge. So between these two, the fibers are coursing out. Then as they leave the skull, they're passing through the hypoglossal canal. And then they are between the internal carotid and euphoric carotids here and internal jugular vein. They're passing between. Then they're going deep to the mylohyoid and they're lying on the hyoglossus. So I think previously I've told you to draw the hyoglossus muscle and all the structures related to it. So there again, if you can check the diagram, you find the hypoglossal now drawn by you. You definitely don't know that you've drawn it like this. So this is again that. Then come to branches of communication. Okay. So this hypoglossal nerve, it's just like the typical boy nature. Okay. So not only the hypoglossal, any of these nerves. So if your mother tells you to go and bring something from a store or give some communication to somebody, but on the way you keep contacting your friends if their houses are on the way. Okay, you meet people and go around. So the same way, the branches of communication means it's just having some, a friendship with certain structures. So it's just going close to it and then it again goes forward. So these branches of communication, so when you look at the gross thing, you find some fibers extending from your hypoglossal to go to that particular structures. So what are those? So one is the sympathetic trunk. So you've got a pair of sympathetic trunks extending from your base of your skull up to the coccyx. So at the coccyx they unite, okay, ganglia on impact. And the sympathetic trunk has got cervical ganglia, so that's the superior cervical ganglia, middle and inferior. So in cervical region you've got 3. But this hypoglossal's friend is what? The superior cervical ganglia. So what's the next one? Again, vagus. Again, there's another elevation, inferior ganglia of vagus. Then this is the location where you get your cervical spinal nerves. Okay? And so the 12th is your lowermost cranial nerve. And after that, it is your spinal nerves. So obviously, it's friends with even the first and second cervical spinal nerves. The lingual nerve, because it's going towards the tongue. So also there are some communications because through it, okay, fine, it's lazy. It sends some fibers up to lingual nerve and then from it, they go to the sublateral muscles of the tongue. Okay, so just some communicating fibers. And also your pharyngeal plexus. These are all branches of communication. Then coming to branches of distribution. So when you see the hypoglossal nerve, there are so many fibers coming out of each, but none of them are the original hypoglossal nerves. Rather, they're all from the C1. So it's like a parasite, the C1 which is here. It's a lazy one. So it tells, okay, fine. Why will I check a special? I mean, you have friends, you wish to travel with your friend. So you've got individual vehicles. So you wish to go together on one vehicle. So the same thing, the C1 and hypoglossal are friends. The C1 says, okay, fine. I'll just drop me and where I have to go. So this branches of hypoglossal which come before it reaches the tongue. So before it reaches its destination, what all branches you see of the hypoglossal, they're all the nerve fibers of C1. So this is this hypoglossal nerve and you can see the C1 just below it. And that gives some branches to it. And these will be coursing along with the hypoglossal, original hypoglossal fibers. So here, the C1 fibers here, they go along with the hypoglossal. Okay, but you can see these are all communications or whatever fibers are going to give down here to the infrahyoid muscles. These are all the C1 branches, but which go to the tongue are the original hypoglossal nerve fibers. So here, I should use red color. So here again, pyramid olive, you can see so many rootlets have come out. And then this is a hypoglossal canal. And then you can see initially so many rootlets, they have become 2. And once they come out, it's 1. So it's, it's a good one. It's directly going up to the tongue to supply to the muscles of the tongue. And here, one more thing here, you have to know about your infrahyoid muscles. So this is what? The tongue. Then this representing your mandible. Then you've got your hyoid here. Then the larynx muscles, that is the thyroid cartilage. Then you've got your stomach. Okay. So these are muscles which you see, the infrahyoid muscles of the neck. So this is important because when you are doing a surgery on the thyroid gland, okay, so the midline is what the skin, the incisions are given and the structure is separated. And you find some muscles. So before you reach up to the isthmus of the thyroid gland, they're all called infrahyoid muscles. Okay. So these are all the infrahyoid muscles. So I've actually drawn them away, but they are more close to each other. So this part from the sternum to thyroid cartilage is sternothyroid. From the sternum to hyoid, so this is what? Sternothyroid. So the structures which they're attaching between, so that the name is also the same. So sternothyroid, this is sternohyoid, this is thyrohyoid. And from the genial tubercles down, this is a geniohyoid, the suprahyoid muscle. Okay, so this part is these are all the infrahyoid muscles. So these infrahyoid muscles are innervated by the ansa cervicalis. So this is important again here. So when we're posted in surgery, our PGs used to tease us, they used to ask so many questions and baffle us. Okay, so if your anatomy is good, you can actually tackle your seniors. So this is ansa cervicalis. So this part is the ansa cervicalis. Okay. So if they are, when you're posted in a surgery OT and they ask you, what are you seeing? So these are called the strap muscles. Okay, so when the midline incision is given, so thyroid surgeries are frequently performed. And so as they go up to it, you'll find some muscles. They'll ask you what are they. So these are the infrahyoid muscles, also called as the strap muscles. What is the innervation of these strap muscles? So what supplies the strap muscles? It is the ansa cervicalis. Okay, this body should ansa cervicalis. So why is this important? Why am I teaching in hypoglossal part? So you can see, I told you the C1 gives the fibers, it just goes with it. So this is a friend which is taking the help of the hypoglossal nerve vehicle. So it's going here. So it gives one branch called descendants hypoglossal. Okay, descendants because it appears to come from the hypoglossal. And then you can see C2 and C3. So they are like, okay, fine. C1 is friends with hypoglossal. Let's be friends together. So C2 and C3. These give descendants cervicalis. This is a cervical spinal nerves. So descendants cervicalis. And these two roots, so this is superior root and this is inferior root. Together they form this arc here. This is the ansa cervicalis. And you can see there are branches here. Okay, so this is how it's supplying the infrahyoid. Even the superior belly of omohyoid also comes. I don't know if you remember the omohyoid. The scapula, there was one, that's quite a long back ago. We taught upper limb and there was a scapula there. You have a scapula here. So from this part to your hyoid, you get a muscle that's called omohyoid muscle. So this part is inferior belly, this is superior belly. So this one is your clavicle. Okay, so here some fascia just clings to it. Okay, and then it's forming two bellies here. Superior belly of omohyoid, inferior belly of human. This is more close to the scapula and this goes up to the hyoid. So all these are the infrahyoid strap muscles. Okay. I hope you just got this right. So now just look at this course. So I told you branches of distribution. So the main branch of distribution is lingual branch. Okay. It directly goes, the branch which is supplying to the muscles is a lingual branch. That is the original hypoglossal nucleus derived fibers. But what are the other ones? One is a meningeal branch. See if it's going back. See, this is exit I told you from the cranial cavity. So if some nerve is going again back, so where is it going? Going back into your cranial cavity. So this is your posterior cranial fossa here. So this one which is going back into the posterior cranial fossa is the meningeal branch. So what the meninges supplies the meninges. So the C1 fibers which are joining here, going with the hypo, so they look to be the same, but actually the fiber which is going behind, actually it's coming from the C1. So one is a meningeal branch. Then you can say descendants hypoglossal. Descendants hypoglossal, which through it is supplying a superior belly of homohyoid. Once the ansa cervicalis arc is formed, the rest of the muscles are receiving their innervation. Then again it's going forward, giving nerve to the geniohyoid and also giving nerve to the hyrohyoid. So that's finally how it is ending. So all these are appearing to come from the hypoglossal nerve, but they are not. They are all fibers of C1. So these are all branches of distribution, but only the original branch of distribution, the lingual branch, which carries the fibers from your hypoglossal nucleus. Then coming to the lesions of hypoglossal nerve. So complete hypoglossal division causes, obviously, if the muscle will not get the innervation, the information of what it should do, it will get paralyzed, it will not work. And when you are not working, disuse atrophy. Like if you will not study, I think your brains also will go into disuse atrophy. You will forget how to study again. So something which you don't use it for a long time, you can't use it afterwards. So that's called usually disuse atrophy. So here, if there's a hypoglossal division, then there will be a unilateral ipsilateral lingual paralysis. So one half of your tongue, the movements are not the same as the other half, they are weakened. And after some time, the muscles also, they lose that, the bulkiness on those. So they start getting atrophy. So you mentioned hemiatrophy for half of it. And if both the tongues, both the hypoglossal nerves are cut, then your tongue is motionless. So just like in the vulva, you don't speak. So we just have to, like, we want to say that your hypoglossal nerves are not helping you. So if the hypoglossal nerve, so do you think now the tongue is motionless, but if someone gives an ice cream, the HOD comes and says, okay, this person is totally scared, let's give him some chocolate. Okay, but then you know the taste. Why? Because the tongue, though you're acting that your hypoglossal nerves are lost, but still your taste sensation, the general sensation are still there because they are not carried by your hypoglossal nerve. So you can taste the ice cream very well and enjoy it also. Okay, so this part. So the lesion of hypoglossal nerve, remember, one side, ipsilateral lingual paralysis, and after that, there will be the bulkiness is lost and it starts atrophy. If both the sides, the tongue cannot move because the hypoglossal nerve moves the tongue. Both sides, then there is tongue remains motionless. But taste or the general sensations are not affected. And of course, because of the lesions of the hypoglossal, whether it's unilateral, it's difficult. I mean, a patient with this hypoglossal nerve lesions of both the sides, it's rare, but if it takes place, so the difficulty in talking as well as swallowing. So testing the hypoglossal nerve, so the patient is asked to poke. So this one is a physiology part. So here, this is affected, okay? And you can see when this side, the muscles are paralyzed, so they are weak, and this is strong. So then these tend to push the tip of the tongue towards the side which is affected, okay? So the stronger person, weaker person. So stronger person can easily push the weaker one because this can't counter the strength of the other side. So this is about the testing hypoglossal nerve. So that's about the hypoglossal nerve. So let's talk about the summary once again. So hypoglossal nerve is a 12th cranial nerve. It is a motor nerve. It innervates the tongue musculature. So it is important in the movements of the tongue. And movements of the tongue are important for your speech. They're also important for deglutition and also important for the mastication. Okay. So this hypoglossal nerve, it is in the brainstem. If you look at the developing brainstem, it belongs to the first motor column of the brainstem, and that is the somatomotor or somatic efferent column. So it is in line with the oculomotor, trochlear, and abducens, and below it is continuous with the location of the ventral brain. So whatever fibers come out of it are the lower motor neurons. Then coming to the nucleus and the nerve. The hypoglossal nerve nucleus is located in the medulla. So it's a 2 centimeter long nucleus located in both in the upper part as well as in the lower part. That is the open and the closed part of the medulla oblongata. And from there, the fibers exit out. So these fibers initially are like a number of rootlets, and they all unite to form one single nerve called as a hypoglossal nerve. So once the fibers come out, so they are coming from the anterolateral sulcus of medulla oblongata, that is between two elevations of the ventral aspect of the medulla, that is the pyramid and the olive. Okay, so they come out and then they have to go through the subarachnoid space, and here they're related to the vertebral artery, and then they pierce the dura mater and they enter into the hypoglossal canal. So once they enter into the hypoglossal canal, now the number of rootlets are only 2. Then they exit out, they're entering into the extracranial region. So when they're coming out, they're related to your internal carotid artery, which is going inside into your cranial cavity. And the internal jugular vein, which is actually formed from above and comes downwards. And there are another 3 cranial nerves which are coming down to your jugular foramen, that is the 9, 10, and 11. So at the exit, at the base of the skull, you see so many structures are all close together. So usually at that region, if there is some tumor or some mass affecting the hypoglossal nerve, then its friends also may get affected. So patient may present with multiple cranial nerve palsy. It's not just the hypoglossal cranial nerve palsy. So once it comes out, it passes between the carotid and the jugular vein, and then it has to go to the tongue. So on its way, it communicates with the sympathetic trunk, then it communicates with your cervical nerves. So these are all the friends, the lingual nerve, etc. Then coming to the branches of distribution. So the original branches of distribution are the lingual branches. The rest all branches are they are from the C1 fibers, which is a friend of hypoglossal and just jumps onto the vehicle of the hypoglossal. Okay? So then again it goes back, it goes, okay, we'll go to the next tree, we'll go back again. So then it goes back, the fiber goes into the posterior cranial fossa to supply the meninges there. That's called a meningeal branch. And as it is going down, it's again sending down a branch, descendants hypoglossal. That will take part in formation of ansa cervicalis. And from there, again to your geniohyoid and thyrohyoid muscles. So that finishes the C1. And coming to ansa cervicalis is an important structure that innervates your intrahyoid muscles, also called as your strap muscles. And this is part of your carotid sheath. So the carotid sheath, the deep cervical fascia is completed. If you remember, there's a carotid sheath. The deep cervical fascia is modified into different structures, the cervical fascia. So investing layer of deep cervical fascia, pretracheal fascia, prevertebral fascia, and the fourth one is your carotid sheath. So in the carotid sheath, you've got a carotid, jugular, and these 3 cranial nerves. So this anterior fibrous sheath, that's where you find the ansa cervicalis. So the one root is coming from your hypoglossal nerve, the other root is coming from C2 and C3. So that's how the diagram you have to practice. And that's it. After that, it supplies to all the muscles. And here, especially the genioglossus is one muscle which receives innervation from the other side. Okay. So then coming to testing of hypoglossal nerve, just poking the tongue out. So that's the end of the hypoglossal nerve. I hope you understood this class.